My SDBXW filed for a divorce 8 months ago. We've been separated for 8 months and moved in with her affair partner. Divorce is to be finalized next month. Now she's begging not to go through with it and begging me to try reconciliation. My wife, 38 years old, and I, 37 years old, met when we were both attending college. We were together for 5 years before getting married. Our marriage has been rather solid, with just a few ups and downs along the way. We have 2 kids, ages 13 and 15, who were born in January of last year, and I noticed that my wife was spending more time on the phone than she normally did. She basically did the same thing as every other cheater. When I tried to express my concerns, they lied, transferred blame, and gaslighted me. I was humiliated. I'm well aware that I wasn't flawless and that I made errors that I sincerely regret, but she treated me like a piece of garbage during her relationship with him. All parts of our connection that she thought were missing were addressed by me in an effort to make them better. When D-Day came in early June, she acknowledged to having an EA and to having only slept with him twice in the previous year. After that, she accused me of being the catalyst for her relationship with another man. After she said that she desired reconciliation, we sought reconciliation with her, but she was just not interested. She maintained communication with him, and the two of them continued to communicate. As soon as I mentioned my dissatisfaction, she insisted that they were just friends and proceeded to erase text even after I advised her not to do so. Upon hearing that I was considering divorce, she sobbed, apologized, and begged me not to proceed. When I brought up the affair, she got outraged, and I was the one who ended up having to apologize to her for my actions. After a period of 2 or 3 months, she started to disappear without a trace, stating that she was visiting relatives who need her assistance at the time. After a while, I had a sense she was going to see AP, and when I brought it up to her, she was quite convincing. She went gone for a weekend and didn't answer any of my calls or messages. When she returned, she told me that her cousin had become unwell and they needed to transfer her to the hospital, and that she had left her phone at her sister's home while they were transporting her, and I was putting in my best effort to make it work for us the whole time. She was observant of all of my attempts, but she couldn't care less. When she told me she was leaving in mid-December, I couldn't believe it. She said she was unhappy in our relationship and that she still loved me, but that she was in love with another man. She had finally met the person she had been searching for. I remember weeping for hours in an attempt to convince her, but she was firm in her convictions. It was necessary to tell the youngsters. Given the limited space in her AP apartment, I was advised to keep the children throughout the week and bring them back to her on the weekends. She filed for divorce a week after that incident. The last several weeks have been the most hardest of my life, and I have sobbed for weeks. Despite my best efforts, she just expressed regret for all she had put me through and said that she would want to apologize, but her mind was already made up. Except for us, no one else was aware of what was going on. They were both aware that we had simply been separated, but they had no clue why we had been separated. When her mother called at the end of January and insisted that I tell the truth, I had already invited her and her father to my house. On my mother-in-law's shoulder, I sobbed almost to the point of tears as I told them what I had learned. They'd offered me consolation and expressed regret for their daughter's irresponsible behavior. I then contacted my parents and a few close acquaintances, and before long, everyone was aware of our existence, and I started receiving comforting messages from others who were discussing my ex-boyfriend. A few times later, my wife called me and broke down in tears, telling me that I had turned everyone against her and that she despises me. In addition, she claims that persons have threatened her and AP, that her father despises her, they had a nice relationship, and that her sisters have refused to engage in conversation with her. No one will be able to speak to her without making her feel uncomfortable. It was the middle of April at the time. By the beginning of June, her relationship with AP had deteriorated as a result of the stress she was experiencing. In one of her visits to the kids, she informed me that her AP had kicked her out because he couldn't handle the stress of their relationship. She was staying in a hotel room at the time of this conversation. The look of someone who was depressed was not there in her. When she inquired as to whether she could move back in, I responded in the negative. She conveyed her appreciation, but asked for more time with the children to be spent with them. After expressing regret for having missed the children's activities, she said that she would come back in the afternoon to cook for them and spend time with them. I was in agreement. As soon as I arrived home from work, she would be there to cook my favorite supper, clean the house, and leave little notes with flowers saying I love you. She would always make an effort to spend extra time with me when I got home from work. I have to admit that it was a pleasure to spend time with her. Her next words were about how much she misses me and whether or not I actually want a separation from my husband. I used to avoid these kind of talks. She contacted me last week to say that she had been attending IC and wondered if we might try MC instead of IC. So she's started out dressed like that, with makeup on, and she's made an effort to initiate with me, which I've rejected down flat. She has gone out and bought extra stuff for me, and she has mentioned MC on a number of occasions. She sobbed throughout the weekend, pleading with me not to continue with the divorce. She said that she has already endured a great deal, and that all she wants is for me and her family to be together again, and that she would do everything I asked. It's almost as if the roles have been reversed in this situation. I've stayed numb throughout this ordeal, but a part of me is happy that she's finally received a dose of her own medicine. Despite the fact that I still love her, I'm unsure whether or not I should try to restart our relationship. Story 2. Wife re-enters the workforce. Things change. Is she cheating? So Cindy, my wife of 28 years, has re-entered the workforce and is doing very well. Her first employment was as a local sales representative after 20 years of being at home to raise our 3 children. She was quickly promoted to regional manager and began traveling often for work, including occasional overnight trips. Cindy is a lovely 52-year-old MIL female who has been very reclusive throughout her life, but she seems to be bursting out of her shell as a consequence of her newfound success in her professional life. Possibly, I'm reading too much into it, but I wanted to share my thoughts and get comments from the group. She has a lovely shape that is voluptuous while yet being healthy and toned. After our child had stopped breastfeeding, she had a breast augmentation procedure. She is only approximately 6 tall. I've always thought she was extremely beautiful, but she was reluctant to dress in a manner that would show off her excellent shape. The situation has changed. When she dresses for work, she always frames and accentuates her large breasts, as well as her attractive. It was a long time before she realized she had to keep it covered, even while she was wearing trousers. Now, when she returns home, she dresses in light-colored yoga pants that display everything about herself. Her newfound feeling of self-worth, I'm thinking, is the result of a recent epiphany. However, consider the following. Following a long journey, she returned home late on Friday night, had a glass of wine, and instantly went to bed the next morning. I fed the kids, put them into bed, turned on the television, drank a bourbon, and went to bed early. Sin had fallen asleep naked behind the sheets, snoring like a lumberjack. As soon as I wake up the next morning, I see her moving and she immediately snuggles up next to me and begins to kiss me. I had a feeling that this was going to be a fantastic obsession. I take her in my arms, kiss her, and pull her close to me. I turn her over, climb over her, and continue to suck her, which are rather enormous. She lowers her legs as if to indicate that I should approach closer to her. I've always enjoyed receiving oral fulfillment from her. As I slide down on her to taste her, I see that her has been. Her body has never been exposed to me in the 30 years that I've been consuming her. It is trimmed short during the summer months so that it does not protrude from her bikini. She, on the other hand, has never it. I don't say anything and just drive around like a freight train, driving her crazy. Come on, come back up there, F her, and don't even get me started on her new grooming habits. What are your opinions on the matter? Is this becoming too much of a nuisance?